Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, or good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Data Collection and Editing Workflows using ArcGIS Pro. My name is Ian Greensmith, and I work with the Education and Research Group at Esri Canada. A workflow that we're going to use for this webinar to enable data collection in the field will look as follows. The workflow really has two different entry points. So you can either prepare and edit your data in ArcGIS Pro or use ready-to-use feature templates from ArcGIS Online. I'm going to spend a lot of my time here as I want to discuss the different options available to you, and I'm going to show you a couple of the options as well. Once the data has been created, you then publish that data as a hosted feature layer to ArcGIS Online. But you could easily check to see if, you could easily switch out ArcGIS Online and substitute it with Portal for ArcGIS. Once it's published, you'll then create a web map when the web map actually contains those hosted layers. And the web map is actually an important feature in this workflow, as it acts as a container for your data and serves really as the input for the out-of-the-box application that we're going to be using on our mobile device. Once the web map's created, then you can decide how discoverable you want that content to be, whether that is for everybody, making it publicly available, or that is for everyone within your organization, or for specific group members. And finally, the last step is really just to take the data into the field and to perform any collection edits or updates that are part of your unique workflows. So as you can see here, there are a lot of steps to follow, but the slides that follow will illustrate how to perform them with relative ease to get you out into the field sooner. So let's start by focusing on the data itself and the data creation options that exist within ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS Online. And there are a few ways to go about creating data. The options that I'll show you can be both done, as I mentioned, in ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS Online, but from two different vantage points. The first one is starting from scratch. And when starting from scratch, you can create data directly inside the project file GeoDatabase that comes with each project, that's created rather, with each project that you launch within ArcGIS Pro. Or something that you may not know about is the ability to create an empty feature layer directly within ArcGIS Online. Alternatively, if you have your own data that you've collected or that your students have collected, then by all means you can use that. A kind of a hybrid approach between the two is the ability to leverage one of our hosted feature layer templates that exist in ArcGIS Online as well. Diving in a little bit more to the data creation side, here's some common steps to follow, or really just kind of things to remember when starting from scratch, specifically in ArcGIS Pro. So we know that we're going to be using our file GeoDatabase that's part of the project. Within that file GeoDatabase, we're going to invoke some GeoDatabase behavior. Specifically, we're going to set up domains inside the GeoDatabase. Domains allow us to predefine what values are acceptable for attributes that we're collecting. Once those domains have been created, we'll create any data that we require inside the GeoDatabase. Once that data is created, once those feature classes are created, then you can add fields for populating with attributes and also assign those domains that I mentioned in an earlier step where relevant. From there, you would symbolize your data, and the symbolizing and actually even doing some test editing, these last 2 points on the slide, I would see as really an iterative process, as you wouldn't necessarily get it right the first time, as you may all have experience with adding data to a map within ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro, and the application assigning a default some default symbols to it, or default color ramp to it, and that might work, that might not work, depending on your needs. So definitely spending the time on the data creation side or data editing side, and I'll talk a little bit more about templates in the next section, is a good thing to do, because it especially comes to editing. It's a good thing to really test things in Pro, because chances are, if it doesn't work, if the editing process doesn't really work in Pro, then chances are it's not going to work in the field either. So setting aside the time to do that now is a really good idea. Now, the same thing's possible when starting from scratch in ArcGIS Online, where I can actually create that empty hosted feature layer, define a series of attributes, and even prepare it for field use by enabling attachments and sync capabilities for disconnected or offline use. The huge benefit of this approach is that you start with a layer that can really be added to any web map. So because it's created and hosted in ArcGIS Online, just like the layer that we're going to be publishing in this webinar, this is immediately usable across different applications. I've included the direct link on where you can go to actually create this new layer in the slide, so I'm not going to be covering it today, but it's there for you as a reference. When using your own data, provided the data are already stored inside a GeoDatabase, you can actually skip directly to the publishing part of the workflow, because you're already leveraging the GeoDatabase behavior, and any data displayed in your project would more than likely be symbolized appropriately. So whether that's using the behavior or really any additional testing through edits, all that stuff's been done. But this slide, you might be kind of wondering, well, hang on a second, I don't use a GeoDatabase. All my data are in shape files and in text files. Well, we've done webinars in the past on the advantages of managing data inside a GeoDatabase, and we can refer you to previous GeoDatabase webinars on the limitations of working with multiple shape files and tables in a disconnected fashion, if that's of interest to you. The last option that I'll mention here before I jump over to ArcGIS Pro is that is really diving a little bit more into these hosted templates that exist. So it's kind of that mix between starting from scratch and having something that's existing. So similar to an earlier slide, you're able to, that kind of described how we can create this layer right from when your My Content section of your ArcGIS Online account. You can create an empty hosted feature layer. You can that has a pre-existing schema. It has pre-existing symbology. It has attributes. It already has attachments enabled. You can even actually go one step further and download this entire configurable template as a package for use from the ArcGIS Solutions website, and I've included the link on the slide here. So I hope you, when digesting this right now or digesting it at a later date, realize that there are a couple of different ways to jump the queue in this workflow that we're working our way through. So what I'll do now is I'll just switch over to ArcGIS Pro and show you a little bit more of what things look like. Okay, so we're inside ArcGIS Pro, and what I want to do is I want to walk through two data creation workflows. The first one is in ArcGIS Pro, and that's starting from scratch. And the second one, I'm going to switch over to ArcGIS Online. Knowing that we have a GeoDatabase that's part of our project, the first thing I want to do is I want to define some domains. And to do that, I'll just open the design view for the domains, and I can quickly start adding in various descriptions, choose my field type, and add various codes as well. You may be wondering, well, why, Ian? Why are you spending all that time typing? It doesn't make any sense. There are tools that can help you circumvent that, and you're absolutely right. The tools such as table to domain, which will take a text file or a CSV file that has one individual domain, can be imported. You can run a tool and have that imported directly to to the GeoDatabase. Unfortunately, this build of ArcGIS Pro, it's actually a known documented issue where you can run the tool, but the domain itself won't be updated until you close ArcGIS Pro and reopen it. So what I would rather do is show you how to add domains rather than showing you how fast I can close ArcGIS Pro and reopen it. So here we've got our classification domain, and we have now our condition domain. There we go. So I've defined 2 domains, and the last thing I'll do is I'll save my work, and this will assign those domains to and save them within the GeoDatabase and allow me to keep going in my workflow. The next thing we're going to do is actually create a feature class that we're actually going to be publishing and configuring a little bit further throughout this webinar. To do that, much like you'd be used to in your catalog window within ArcMap, you'd right-click and create a new feature class. For this, I'm just going to give it some attribution here. I'm going to accept a lot of the defaults with the exception of Z values. The coordinate system I'm going to leave as is, and the reason you would do that is because ArcGIS Online uses the Web Mercator projection. So any service that I publish, any web map that I create, and any application that I use, I want to ensure that stuff's lining up. I want to ensure that and setting a common projection across those for any layer that I publish to ArcGIS Online is a really good idea. So I'll leave that as is. Publish. This will happen relatively quick, and once that's created, we can close that. You'll see that it's been added to my table of contents with some simple default symbology, as I mentioned, that can help or hinder our progress into being able to see it. But so we've done domains, we've created the data. Now we actually want to create some fields. So here we go to our data tab. So specifically related to our sign inventory layer, we'll click on the data tab and then click on fields. And here I'll add a series of fields that'll just be enough to capture the information that we're interested in. I'm going to add 2 fields here that actually correspond to the domains I created earlier. One's called condition, and because the field data types match, I'm able to select my my domain here from a drop-down menu. And I can even select my default value as well. And it's not to say that the default values can't be overridden, but at this point, assigning default values is a good idea. That just kind of speeds up the editing and data collection process. Okay, one more. Good. Okay, so we've added all of our attributes now, and I can click save. So it takes a little bit of time, but I know that I'm comfortable with the attributes. I'm specifically happy with the field types that I've chosen, and that anything that I've added to this, I know that it'll be associated with it. So I'll go ahead and close this. And now I've got some default symbology here, but what I want to do is I want to just do a couple of quick test edits. To do that, I'm just going to click on the Edit tab and choose Create. And I'm going to spend a bit of time coming back to this Create Features pane. And this actually is where your feature templates live for any layer that's participating in the editing process, or in your editing workflow rather. So I'll click on this, and now I can add a series of points. I can even go back to the attribute table here and add a few more. And the last one. There we go. Now I can, I'll save my edits. And now I've gone from really no data to full attribute domains to a feature class, with attribute fields and associated domains in a relatively short period of time. What I'll do now is I'll switch over to ArcGIS Online. I just want to show you briefly how fast we can kind of really circumvent this process by creating creating a feature layer based on a template. And you do that from the My Content pane. Under the Create button, choose Feature Layer. Now there are a wide range of templates that exist from agriculture to utilities to the environment. I have one that I want to show you. So I'll just use a keyword search for hydrant. Oh, it doesn't exist in environment. That's why I need to change it back to show all. And it'll provide me a little bit more information about it. But what I can do is just click Create. These are the layers that are going to be included. So 2 layers. One's a table actually, and the other one is actually a layer. Click Next. Here I can define the extent. So I'm in Toronto, so I'll just I'll set it to right around where our offices are. Click Next. I'll give it a title. I'll adopt the tag and any summary stuff that exists, and then I'll click Done. And within a very short period of time, I've now circumvented or really jumped the queue, as I mentioned earlier, to have a layer that has attributes defined. So I can go here into under the Data tab and see what attributes exist for here. I can visualize this layer as well. Now, granted, there's nothing to visualize because no points have been added, but you can at least see the symbology that exists. If I were to go and add this to a map, I'd be able to edit and add features in a variety of different spots and add content with the predefined attributes that exist. And I could even save that . And make this discoverable if I wanted to with others. So I'll, for the purposes of today's session, I'll just I'll save it in a group that I have made available to certain group members. The nice thing about going through and sharing items this way is that ArcGIS Online is smart enough to know, oh, okay, well you've you've created this web map and you want to share it, but there's something that exists within it that needs to be shared as well. So you need to update that sharing in order for everyone to be able to access it. And with that done, that's it. You've really done the entire workflow. And I'll make sure that when we start touching on the collector for ArcGIS, the data collection app that I'll highlight today, that I show you this hydrant inspection map as well. So 2 different options for creating data, depending on your needs. Both work great. In this section, I'm really just going to talk at a high level about the editing environment and how you interact with it with ArcGIS Pro. I think there's a lot of depth that you can go into in this session, but I think at a high level, understanding how to access tools, a lot of the editing I've actually already covered in the data creation section of this webinar. But moving into this, editing in ArcGIS Pro is much more streamlined and in a much more intuitive process compared to ArcMap. On the ribbon that I would have showed you earlier, the Edit tab provides quick access to tools and commands that edit 2D and 3D feature data. And they're organized into groups to help you find related tools such as creating and modifying features, or something that's newly supported that is enabling map and geodatabase topologies, and even managing your feature templates. So having tools grouped like this, it makes a ton of sense and actually removes the need for having multiple editing toolbars open on your map, cluttering your display. Some things to remember about editing in ArcGIS Pro is that you're actually technically always in an edit session, provided you have permission to edit data in your map or scene that you're working in. It's possible to edit multiple workspaces at the same time, so whether you're working with multiple file geodatabases or multiple different types of geodatabases, so an enterprise geodatabase, for example, or even if you're working with shape files. But it's also possible to restrict editing, to disable the editing of individual layers from the contents pane. Now that last point that I make is separate from the data controls that you can set inside an enterprise geodatabase. This is kind of at the project level, but nevertheless you do have the ability to restrict editing. ArcGIS Pro actually can adapt as well, and what I mean by that is that different users require different ways to access tools depending on what they're trying to accomplish. And because of this, tools can be accessed from the edit pane, from various context menus, or even live editing on screen using the on-screen controls, as you can see in the screenshot. And having this type of accessibility really does help speed up the editing process as well, so you don't have to constantly refer back to multiple toolbars, remember when you should be right-clicking, or remember a whole host of keyboard shortcuts. Just like in ArcMap, ArcGIS Pro relies on templates to create and edit features and their associated attributes. Templates store references to default attribute values and attribute overrides, and can even store tool references to only show tools that apply to the edit being made. Now, the 4 that I'll cover here on this slide can all be managed within the Manage Templates pane that I'll show you when we go back to ArcGIS Pro. Feature templates are the default template type, and that's what I'm going to show you in the next demonstration, and that's working with a single data source. Group templates, as the name suggests, are really ideal when working with spatially coincident features or related features from multiple feature classes, like features participating in a water or sewage network, where through a series of primary and component feature templates, features can be generated automatically, thus reducing the time needed to edit individual features. Preset templates what I'm trying to say is that they're generated from a collection of selected features and allow you to work with multiple features on your map. So this template is actually quite useful for workflows that require replicating collections of features throughout a map. So one or more features just need to be really copied and pasted into multiple areas across the map. And the last one here, which is actually quite interesting, is the table template. And this is actually generated when you add a table to the map that participates in a relationship class and allows you to insert a row in the participating table seamlessly. I wanted to include this slide just to provide you a link to additional documentation on common editing workflows, like the ones we've covered so far, and even the bullets on the slide do actually cover. I've covered some of them, and I'll cover the others in the next demonstration. But having this link is an excellent resource for you. So we'll switch back over to ArcGIS Pro and just walk through setting up a feature template. Okay, so we're here in ArcGIS Pro, and we have some simple symbology. The first thing I want to do is change the appearance of the layer itself. So when I was doing those test edits, I inserted a handful of types, and I have a layer file that can take advantage of the types that I've entered. And to do that, I'm just going to import a layer file from the Appearance tab. It has I've identified my target layer, and I have a layer file here that I can just point to and map the relevant types that I want to showcase. And when I run this, my symbology is refreshed, and the specific symbols better reflect what I'm trying to show. And so whether it's a stop sign, a yield sign, and so on. Now, when it comes to editing now, if I go back to the Edit tab and click on the Create button, now you'll see that my Create Features pane has updated. It's updated to include this revised feature template. And now for every type of sign that's here and classed inside my inventory, I can click on it and I can add a specific stop sign to the map. I can even go one step further and go to the attributes. I can give some specific information to it. Save my work and be done with it. So in a relatively short period of time, I've created a feature template that is reusable, that it really does speed up the editing process. Now, I talked about attribute overrides as well. If you have any attribute overrides that you want that go beyond the default values that exist, I don't have one selected. Just bear with me a second. There we go. So they go beyond the default values that exist here. Then what you can do is click on this little forward arrow here, and you can define an alternative value depending on what you want to do, if there's something unique happening in a given area. So those are feature templates. Now let's switch over to the slides again and keep going with the publishing and data collection workflows. The next session is really two sections that I've pushed together, kind of on purpose, because it really one feeds directly into the other. So we'll spend a bit of time talking about publishing, and then the latter half on data collection. So for those of you who were sitting in on a previous webinar that we ran on migrating content to ArcGIS Pro, there are numerous avenues for publishing and sharing content to ArcGIS Online that range from individual files to packages to layers, web maps, and web scenes. For this webinar, because we're publishing directly to ArcGIS Online from ArcGIS Pro, We're going to author and publish a web map using one tool. Once published, the content can be reused within ArcGIS Pro as well as across the ArcGIS platform, including browsers and mobile devices. Now, to be clear, what's actually happening with this tool, which is the Share Web Map tool that I've got a screenshot there on the slides, is that when the tool runs, the layers that are participating in the map, that exist in the map, are published first. So those layers are published. Once published, a web map's created with the default extent and the symbology captured within that. And doing that is actually an extremely efficient method for publishing and sharing. I still have control over what happens with individual layers, but I can also define and speed up the process of getting a web map available to those who are interested in using it, those group members that are part of the data collection webinar group that I showed you earlier. So from my sharing options that you can see here on the slide, I'm able to define if it's going to be accessible to people inside my organization, publicly available, or to any group that I've defined. The application that we're going to use for our data collection, as I alluded to earlier, is a collector for ArcGIS. Now, if you're not familiar with it, I'll just speak at a high level to it this afternoon. It's a free mobile app. It's available on Android, iOS, and Windows devices. Once signed in with your ArcGIS Online identity, you can update point, line, and polygon features, their attribute information, and input multiple forms of media on each feature. New functionality that's come out in the past year is actually quite helpful for those who perform data collection that require better accuracy and reliable quality control. Collector can actually now be configured for use with professional grade high accuracy GPS receivers. Something that's been around for a couple of years now is that you can actually take your work offline. So if you're going to be in an area that has intermittent connectivity, but you have the ability to download the web map and all the data directly to your device and work with a copy of that data in a disconnected fashion. Once you're connected again, you can easily sync your changes back to ArcGIS Online or to your enterprise GeoDatabase. Collector is actually just one alternative for data collection in the field. There are actually numerous alternatives. A few of the examples I've got here on the slide. One is the GeoForm, which is a configurable template for form-based editing of a feature layer, as opposed to map-based editing. So this application allows users to enter data through a form instead of a map's pop-up window, while leveraging the power of the web map and feature layers directly within ArcGIS Online. An alternative to that is the crowdsourced polling app, which is a configurable template just like the GeoForm, and allows users to submit comments and feedback on existing plans and proposals. A final option to consider is Survey 123 that offers a simple and intuitive form-centric data gathering solution that makes creating, sharing, and analyzing surveys possible. So that's a lot to digest in one section, but really we'll go back to Pro and start to make a little bit more sense of this publishing and data collection workflow now. Okay. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be sharing this content out to ArcGIS Online. To share when publishing, a lot of that is achieved through the Share tab. So from Share, I'll click on Web Map, and this is going to bring up my the tool that I referenced earlier, the Share Web Map tool. I'll just provide some simple information here, and I can immediately define who I'm going to share this with. So I just want to share it with this specific group, And I could hit share now, but I don't want to, because remember I said that I can actually control the configuration of participating layers in the web map as well. To do that, I'll click on the content link, and I'll look at the hierarchy of content being published, and I'll just highlight that here that signed inventory is the name of the layer, and that's the name of the layer over here in the contents page. But underscore WFL is appended to the name. WFL is a web feature layer. I can right click on this and configure the web layer properties. And you'll see here that it defaults to a feature layer. It's exactly what we want. And what I want to do is further configure the layer itself. And I want to enable editing, and I also want to enable syncing. If syncing is not enabled, then you're not going to be able to take the data offline. So you want to ensure that if you know you're going to be out in a disconnected environment, make sure that enable sync is enabled in addition to enable editing. Otherwise, people are just going to that are participating in this group who have Collector, who've signed in, they'll be able to open Collector, sign in, and open the map, and really just review the content. That's it. So with those two changes made, we'll go back to the main page and click share. So it doesn't take very long, but we're publishing this one web layer. We're really transferring this schema and the data up to ArcGIS Online, and that's going to become a service. It creates that web map. There we go. So with that done, I want to switch over to ArcGIS Online, and we'll leave our hydrant map. I just want to show you here in my table of contents the three items that were created, and that is directly in line when we were configuring the web feature layer for the signed inventory. So we have a web map that's been created, the service definition that actually contains the data in the schema. That's actually what's transferred to ArcGIS Online. This layer, this signed inventory feature layer, is published from the service definition layer, and the web map is wrapped around it. So I can open this web map. I can start interacting with it, but I think what's going to be more interesting for you to see is how we can switch over to an emulator like this and show you how we have a Collector here on an Android device. I can just quickly refresh my feed and be able to show you how I now have a couple of different maps. I have the signed inventory map. That's the one that we've been working through from scratch. But then I also have my hydrant inspection map. I can tap on the signed inventory map. Now, it's going to take my position into consideration, and because of that, it locates me relatively close to where my signs are. So I can tap on any of these features, click on it. I can, if I choose to edit this one and say, well, no, hang on, this one's no good. This one needs to be repaired. I can update that information here. Hit the check mark and submit my updates right back to ArcGIS Online. Or if I had an enterprise GeoDatabase set up, I could sync directly to that as well. Alternatively, if I wanted to add a point in a specific area, I can say, okay, well, there's a hazard here. And submit that as well. So what may seem like a relatively simple process is it's actually good that it appears to be simple. Is actually quite powerful, because I can switch from the emulator now and go back into my web map, let the screen refresh, and now I can see that my hazard that I've added here exists, and also that any change that I've made to this yield sign exists as well. If I keep going further back and go back into ArcGIS Pro, and I turn off the original data and access data from my portal, and you'll notice here in the top right hand corner that I'm signed in with my account to my education and research organization. And from the project pane, if I click on portal, this gives me access to all of the content that I have saved to and associated with my ArcGIS Online account. So I can right click on this layer here and add this to my map and have access to the exact same information. So with that, we'll switch back to the slides and wrap things up. So revisiting our workflow and summarizing what we've covered today, we started by preparing data in ArcGIS Pro, but I showed you that we just as easily circumvented that data creation stage by starting with a feature template in ArcGIS Online. We then published that data to ArcGIS Online and configured the web map. That web map then got shared with group members and accessed through Collector for ArcGIS to perform any edits that were necessary. Now, a great thing about this workflow is that the data can be viewed at any stage once shared in the web map. And additionally, updates can come from any point in the workflow as well. So there's a reason why I showed you how we can go back to the web map, go back to ArcGIS Pro. But once that service has been published, once that in that web map, it really does mean that a lot of different people can make the same edits, and it ensures that you're always working with the most current version of the data. It's also possible to quickly replicate and repurpose any layer and schema that you've published for future projects. So just like I showed you how we could use a template in ArcGIS Online, you could actually use your own content as a template as well for quickly replicating work and getting different groups in different areas working faster. Some resources that'll help you help provide a little bit more information about what we covered today are here. One is specifically for ArcGIS Pro. This is how you can prepare your data in ArcGIS Desktop. Now, it's focusing on desktop, but I showed you how we can quickly apply this to ArcGIS Pro. And the other is creating and sharing a map for data collection for a collector for ArcGIS. Because we're in education and research, we want to point you towards some learning resources that you can use as well, that you can either use as is or apply to suit your own needs. Those of you on the webinar today might know that the Esri training site was relaunched in August, and there are 2 courses on there that may be of interest to you. The first one is Teaching with GIS, Field Data Collection Using ArcGIS. That one specifically focuses on Collector for ArcGIS, and then there's another one titled Getting Started with Survey 123. I have the URLs in my notes here in my slides, but I'm happy to share them with you, or if you have access to the site, then by all means go ahead and search for them. I think a hidden gem that really should get more press is the Learn ArcGIS site. And on this site specifically, as it relates to data collection, is a resource that's titled Manage a Mobile Workforce. So I invite you to check that out in addition to other resources that relate to getting started with ArcGIS Pro. Now, if you're looking for some homegrown Canadian examples, then you can check out Esri Canada's learning resources to learn, to find more resources that related to publishing content to ArcGIS Online, Collector for ArcGIS, and even working with geoforms. But before you dial off and close everything off, I just want to say that on behalf of the Education and Research Group at Esri Canada, I want to thank you for attending today's webinar, and hopefully you were able to get something out of it. So thank you.